The room fell into a deep silence, thick with anticipation. The buzz that had filled the church fellowship hall in Shreveport, Louisiana moments before was now gone. The sound of folding chairs scraping against the polished floor had faded. The murmur of conversations died away as a young girl stood up from her seat, her small hands tightly clutching a well-worn leather-bound Bible. The Bible had been passed down from her late grandmother, and although the pages were faded and worn, the gold lettering still shimmered, carrying with it the weight of generations. 8-year-old Lily, dressed in her best Sunday dress, seemed almost out of place among the adults in the crowd. She wasn't standing there to ask about politics or the future of the country, but instead she had come to ask a question that had been echoing in her heart for weeks. Her mother had whispered to her before they entered the hall, "You can ask him, but only if you're brave enough, and only if you truly mean it." Lily had spent weeks thinking about the question, scribbling it in her notebook during recess and murmuring it to herself at night before bed. It wasn't a question born from a fleeting curiosity. It was something deeper, something that tugged at the very core of her being. The night had begun like any other town hall meeting, with former President Donald Trump speaking to a crowd of local families, retirees, and other residents. The topics were familiar: policies, achievements, and the future of America. The energy in the room was quiet, the usual fervor of his rallies replaced by a subdued atmosphere. Trump spoke with his usual confidence, but it was clear that tonight was different. He didn't have the same fervor as his past public appearances, and the crowd responded with polite applause but little enthusiasm. Then the floor opened up for questions, and a line quickly formed at the microphone. The usual parade of local issues and political questions followed, but Lily waited patiently in her seat. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. She was unsure whether she was brave enough, but her mother gave her a subtle nudge, signaling that now was her moment. The line was long, and Lily's tiny legs wobbled with each step toward the front. Her hand tightened around her Bible, and the whispers that rippled through the crowd only made her feel smaller. It wasn't until she stood before Trump that she felt the true weight of what she was about to ask. Trump, who was known for his quick, forceful responses, looked down at her with curiosity. "And what's your question, young lady?" His voice was unexpectedly gentle. Lily swallowed hard and, with a tremor in her voice, asked the question that had been haunting her for so long. "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" The room went completely silent. No one dared to speak, and even the faintest sounds, the creaking of chairs or the occasional cough, seemed to vanish. The room felt heavy, almost as though the air itself was holding its breath. Trump's face softened, and for a moment he seemed to lose the trademark bravado he carried with him. His eyes briefly dropped to the Bible in Lily's hands, and his usual self-assurance seemed to slip away. For a man who had built a career on quick answers and relentless certainty, Trump's silence was deafening. He stared at the young girl for a long moment, as if trying to find the words. The room waited with bated breath. Finally, he spoke. "That's a big question," Trump said slowly, his voice unexpectedly steady, "and it's not one I've always had the answer to." The admission caught the audience off guard. Trump, a man known for his unshakable confidence, was openly admitting uncertainty. He looked at Lily again, and his tone shifted to something more reflective. "When I was about your age," Trump continued, "I had a lot of questions about God, too. My parents would take me to church every Sunday, and I remember sitting in those pews staring at the stained glass windows, wondering if God was even listening to me." The room stayed hushed, everyone listening closely to his words. "My father used to tell me," Trump went on, "that faith is like a ladder. You climb it one step at a time, and sometimes you're afraid you'll fall, but you keep climbing because there's something up there worth reaching for." A faint chuckle rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension slightly. But Lily didn't smile. Her wide eyes remained locked on Trump, waiting for the real answer to her question. Trump shifted his weight slightly, leaning forward as his voice became quieter. "At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought it was just something he said to keep me quiet." Lily's gaze never wavered. She was listening intently, eager for a deeper answer. But as I got older, Trump continued, life threw a lot of challenges my way. I faced losses, failures, and moments where I wasn't sure if I could keep going, and in those times I didn't always feel like God was with me. Sometimes I was angry at him. Other times I thought maybe he had given up on me altogether. The room remained captivated. For the first time, Trump wasn't just giving a polished political answer, he was speaking from the heart. His voice trembled slightly and his hand rested on the podium as he tried to steady himself. But I'll tell you this, Trump said, his voice firming up. Even in my worst moments when I thought I was alone, I realized that faith wasn't about always having the answers. It's about believing that even when you don't see the whole picture, there's a purpose. There's something greater at work. He glanced back at Lily, whose grip on her grandmother's Bible had loosened slightly. Her eyes shimmered in the harsh fluorescent light, and the room could feel the shift in the air, the transformation that had begun. And God, Trump said slowly, to me, he's that purpose. He's the reminder that even when we fall, even when we fail, we're not done. He's the one who keeps telling us to climb the ladder, even when it feels like it's going to break. By now, Lily's eyes were glistening and a tear slid down her cheek. The weight of Trump's words seemed to settle deep into her heart. She clutched her Bible tighter as if it were the only thing holding her steady in the moment. The crowd, too, was moved. There was an unspoken connection between them all, an understanding that something profound was unfolding. Trump noticed the tear and his tone softened. "What's your name, young lady?" he asked gently. "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lily," Trump said, smiling faintly. "You know, sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest ones to answer, and sometimes those questions remind us of what really matters." Lily nodded, her face a mixture of awe and quiet pride. Her heart felt full in a way it never had before. "My grandma used to say that too," she said softly, her voice gaining strength. "She said, God is always listening, even when you don't hear him." Trump's expression flickered with something unspoken, understanding, maybe even admiration. He paused, and then, as if the weight of Lily's words had given him a new perspective, he turned to the crowd. "You know," Trump said, "this little girl just asked a question that most adults are too afraid to ask. What does God mean to us? It's not an easy question because it makes us look inward. It makes us face our fears, our doubts, and our flaws." The room was utterly still. Trump's words lingered in the air, their depth felt by everyone present. "We live in a world where we're always looking for answers outside of ourselves," Trump continued, his voice steady but softer than usual. "We think power, success, or money will fill the gaps, but they don't. The real answers are the ones that make us uncomfortable, the ones that make us ask, what do I stand for, what do I believe in, and who am I when no one else is looking?" Trump paused, his gaze returning to Lily. "Thank you for reminding me of that, Lily," he said, his voice tinged with a quiet reverence. "You're wiser than most adults I know." The room erupted into soft applause, but Lily remained still, her cheeks flushed and her eyes filled with quiet pride. The moment was transformative for everyone there, not just because of the question Lily had asked, but because of the answers it had sparked, answers that went beyond politics, beyond policy, and into the very heart of what it means to have faith. As the evening wore on, the conversation deepened. More people spoke up, some about their own struggles with faith, some about the doubts that had clouded their hearts for years. Each story connected them to each other and to something greater than themselves. The room became more than just a town hall meeting. It became a space where vulnerability, honesty, and faith could be shared, and where people could be reminded of what really mattered. The night ended not with a loud rally cry or political speech, but with a collective reflection on life, love, and the faith that binds us all together. For Lily, the question she had asked was the beginning of something far greater than she had imagined. It was a question that opened the door to a deeper understanding of herself, of the people around her, and of the world at large. And as the hall slowly emptied, the air was filled with something far more powerful than any speech could have inspired. a quiet, hopeful belief that faith, in all its forms, was something worth holding on to. And in that moment, Lily understood. Sometimes the simplest questions lead to the most unexpected answers, and sometimes in those answers we find pieces of ourselves we didn't know were missing.